Mr. Chairman, at this time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other members of the board wishing to comment at this point? Okay. I'll invite public comment at this time. I've got one speaker card before us. If you wish to speak to this item, please fill out a speaker card and I'll call your name. Please state your name for the record and keep your comments to 3 minutes. The first speaker card I have is from Dylan Saki, representing Dottie Copeland. Thank you.
Honorable members of the board, my name is Dylan Saki, and I am an attorney at California Rural Legal Assistance. Our organization, along with other organizations, including the local Office of Legal Services of Northern California, has been involved in a lawsuit, MEDSA v. Mendocino County, which has challenged the county's housing element. I am here today on behalf of our client, Dottie Copeland, a very low-income resident of Mendocino County. I hope to make a few points in the short time that I have. Initially, the current housing element requires the implementation of an inclusionary zoning ordinance, and any failure to adopt such an ordinance is a failure to implement the housing element in violation of state law. While we are very eager to see the board take this step to passing the inclusionary zoning ordinance, we also want to reiterate the Prop 98 possible significance, and in that, if that passes in June, any ordinance would need to be significantly restructured. As the board is aware, it is our position that the current housing element is out of compliance with state law because the county has failed to designate sufficient sites for the development of housing affordable to all segments of the economic spectrum here within the county. Specifically housing that is affordable to low and very low income families. Now, unless the inclusionary zoning ordinance is mandatory, we do not believe it will bring the housing element into compliance, as it will not result in the designation of affordable sites or for the actual development of affordable housing. As mentioned in the presentation, a mandatory ordinance has been the primary means throughout the state of addressing inclusionary zoning for all jurisdictions that have explored such an option. The reasons for that is that a voluntary program potentially places developers who wish to participate in the program at an economic disadvantage to those who simply would choose to ignore it. Additionally, without a voluntary program also allows the limited land inventory, which we see in the difficulties in designating sites, allows that inventory to be used up without guaranteeing the actual development of affordable units. Finally, as to in lieu fees, in the draft ordinance, the fees provision we don't believe will be sufficient to bring the housing element into compliance because the fee required is not significant enough to cover this affordability gap that developers are faced with. For that reason, we believe any fee should be determined by this affordability gap. An example of such an equation is actually included in the draft ordinance parenthetically, which I guess is how housing advocates had proposed it. Finally, and I'm wrapping up here, to bring the housing element into compliance, we think the in lieu fees should be triggered by any development. Because there has been such few large developments in this area, to bring it in compliance with state law and actually develop affordable properties, any development should trigger that, whether it's a fractional interest payment of the in lieu fees, or if it hits the 5 or 10 unit threshold, that should require the actual production of affordable units. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is John C. Graff.
Thank you. I am speaking for ECMC at this point. We don't believe in inclusionary housing. We believe that inclusionary housing has been formed or designed to try to help governments fill a quota. And as of yet, there's been no evidence that they do anything for the citizens of the county or the state that they live in. You need to remember that the state of California is one of the people that are implementing inclusionary housing, and it's apparent that they haven't got it right yet by the financial state that the condition that the state's in. It is, if you put a mandatory fee onto the builder, it is another tax. Keep in mind that builders are having a tough enough time trying to make a living at this point. With all the different changes the government's coming down with the liquefaction problem, with the vehicle problem. I mean, there's a date out here in the sun pretty quick where most of the contractors are going to have to replace all their vehicles. The problem that Mendocino County has is we don't have any housing. We need housing, and you need housing to stimulate economic growth. And we don't have any economic growth because we don't have any housing. So if you put a fee on housing, you're going to raise the cost of housing, and you're going to reverse the process instead of help it. Because if you put a fee on there, that's what you're doing. With the in lieu fee, you're going to raise the price of houses. You're going to make the gap even worse between Sonoma County and Mendocino County. Right now, the houses that are being sold in Sonoma County are by and large, no, not by and large, but they're a little bit lower than the houses for sale in Mendocino County because of the repossessions and the bank problems. So, you know, I don't see how this gets you there. I don't see how it solves it. I mean, I think the real solution to low-income housing is RDA money. And I think the wise way for this county to go would be to promote mixed use of existing property that's RDA designated, so you could get RDA funds in a manner that would allow you to build low-income housing where the county itself wanted to build low-income housing, rather than tax builders that are having a difficult time building anywhere. And it's not just in California. I did leave that tax item there for you to see too, because this is a document that the state of Nevada is putting out to try to entice business people in California to move to Nevada. So we're competing not just inside our own state, but we're also competing across the country now. And states have realized that we have a large tax burden, and that I don't see how this is going to solve any of that. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grau. Next speaker is John Mayfield. And that's all the speaker cards I have. Is there anyone else? Please fill out a speaker card.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is John Mayfield. I'm a resident of Ukiah. I've asked endlessly for somebody to show me where the inclusionary housing zoning ordinances anywhere in the state of California have produced anything other than a tax on the houses that people are building, and what's it done for the housing stock, independent of what if you had it or didn't have it. And I haven't seen a study to do that. I've asked your staff for that, and I haven't seen anything. I've heard about the ordinance that have been passed. I've heard how they've talked to counties that have adopted them. But the net result of that, has it increased the housing stock for the ones you're trying to service? I think that you need to get it out of your general plan, that it be a requirement of your general plan that you have a inclusionary housing ordinance. I think it's a real mistake, because what it does is drive up the cost of housing and you get no benefit from it. The way to get low-cost housing is to incentivize somebody to build it when there is a need for it. And you can do that with density bonuses. You can do it by providing some subsidies to them and that sort of thing if you feel it's necessary. But you've got a group, the Rural Housing Organization, that's been recently, Dwayne Hill operates, and he's just retiring. They've been very effective at providing low-income housing in this county. The county is not in a position to provide it themselves, but there are certainly mechanisms to do it. But this is just another tax on the middle-income homeowner that's not going to result in any increase in housing stock for it. And I'm yet to see an example of where somebody's done a study that says it's a net result of an increase in housing, and I'm still looking for it. I've been asking for it for 2 years.
Thank you, Mr. Mayfield. Other speakers? Mr. Nickel.